Welcome on to Tradebusters, where me and Mr. Lekdog attempt to debunk the mythical world of trades. I'm Pom. As always, I'm joined by my major co-host, my best mate, and the guy that could probably get a restraining order on me for the amount of times I call him a day. Mr. Lekdog, how are you doing?
I think it's reciprocal. I think we could both get each other in a bit of trouble if we just said, I told him to stop. Yes, welcome back to the show. The aim of this show is to stop people saying, Paddy Dow was drafted with pick 3. Why don't we get pick 3 back for him in a trade? If we can stop people from asking us that question, we've done our job. So it's exciting. Obviously, trade period hasn't officially started, but you've already got players demanding trades, telling people where they're going to get traded to. It's funny how we've got free agency period opens up this week, Pom, yet it's all the players who are still in contract demanding where they go. So anyway, it's an interesting place.
It is an interesting place, and everyone's in. My son's in chat. G'day, David, to you.
Hey!
G'day, mate. Oh, mate. Hi, Dad. That makes me feel old when I remember that I am a responsible adult. James is in. Chills is in. The legend that is Rowan. We've got Ryan and Mel. We've got good evening, Tradebusters from Andy. Good day, mate. How you doing? Says Jay, all the way from SA. Hey, you are honoured, Owen, that Melbourne do feature in this. So we'll get straight into it with probably, I would say, the most underrated player that is leaving, because
100%.
I froth this guy. I froth Tom Doddy, 26 years old, 190 centimeters, 90 kegs. He's that kind of modern day, kind of plays tall, kind of plays that third. I think he's incredibly good. You look at this season, which his last season that he's played, which was injury interrupted, but 11 games, 15 touches, 4.5 marks, 1.5 marks, and a 73.3% one-on-one ratio. Looks like Brisbane and Collingwood in prime position. And imagine that. The AFL, the two best teams in the land, in line to recruit, probably if you can get him right, this guy's a top 5, top 10 player.
Yes, so I said the other day on Twitter that I think we'll look back on this draft/trade period in a couple of years and we'll say Tom Doddy was the best player available. So in non-injury prone years, he ranks elite in intercept possessions, contested possessions, ground ball gets 1%ers. He kind of does it all. He's a solid mark, above average, and his defensive stats, he's really good, like, spoils, contested defensive one-on-ones, pressure acts. He just does all the stuff you want in a defender. I think he's underrated, and I think it's I mean, he obviously wants to go to a good club and experience success, but I think it's a real blight on the competition that these are the two that are in contention. Like, there should have been 17 teams putting their hands up for Tom Doddy this off-season.
But Lekdog, we have equality and equilibrium in the AFL. Everything's fair. Do you know what I mean? No one can monopolise the system, but evidently the grand final winners and the grand final finalists are about to snag him. And I thought what we do here is another education session. You've all told me that you really enjoyed yesterday, and you got a lot out of understanding how the draft picks work. Welcome to another clusterfuck of AFL rules. We're going to try and get this. However, Mrs. Pom has had a really good way, and we'll probably readdress this tomorrow, to redo the draft picks, because she's had a good analogy using Costco cards and shopping at Carlz, which Mrs. Pom, the mistress of making things easy to understand. But banding, so a lot of people get confused with this. Restricted free agent, meaning that if the bid is matched, do you know what I mean? A trade is facilitated. If it's not, a compensation pick occurs. Ben Mackay, pick 3, all that thing. So what I've done here is I've gone through the official AFL rule book, and I have shown you it in layman's terms. So effectively, this is based on a 28-year-old, right? So the rule book, it has it as an average age footballer, right? And for some reason, the average age of a footballer according to the AFL is 28. Don't know why. That's what they do. So there's bandings. So you'll see top 5% is what's called band 1, band 2, 15%, 30%, band 3. Real simple. We're going 1 to 6. Everyone should be able to do that, right? So 800K would make you the top 5% of an average list, which roughly is 800K plus. And that would be an early first. So that's the pick 3 nonsense we're hearing about Ben Mackay. 750K puts you in the top 15, 600K. Now, I want you to see the caveat on the right. Age roughly, right, affects the salary cutoff by 3 to 5%, i.e., if you were a younger player, 770 would change, as opposed to if you were older, they're expecting a higher amount.
The Marvy or Chol rule.
Yeah, so if you were 30, that could be 860K, 880K. So it fluctuates. The younger you are, the lower that bracket. The older you are, the higher it has to be. Hopefully, that hasn't confused you too much, because I read it like 8 times and I was like, either I'm a genius or I am an insane. And I get it.
There's a few caveats to this as well, Pom.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just change their mind, the AFL. So this isn't strictly the only thing they go off. Sometimes they just go, oh, you know what? It's a first rounder.
It's like pirate parlay.
Exactly. It's more like they're not so much rules as they are guidelines. Harry Mackay and Ben Mackay, the example where Elfie used in the article today, because they do the cutoff of age at 31, the 31st of October, not December. So but Mackay is going to be signed as a 27-year-old or a 25-year-old instead of a 26-year-old, which changes the compo. And the other asterisk is that they're using the old salary numbers, 800K, 750K, 600K, 500K, instead of the new CBA salary numbers, which are going to be backdated and people are going to get bonuses. So for the 2023 season, people are going to get paid more than what we're currently using to evaluate players. So basically, again, it's just the AFL getting caught out, not really actually having a backup plan. But let's not get too distracted by that. 800K first round pick decreases after that.
So Chills and says, similar questions. This is for players that fall under the compensation rule. So players like Tom Doedee, restricted free agent. Adelaide have said they're not going to match. They'll take the compensation pick. Ben Mackay, the players that are eligible for compensation picks. So you've got your unrestricted free agents, which effectively is like a Mickey Mouse AFL rule. They're not in contract, but they aren't. But basically, they're free to sign. Best way to think of it, unrestricted free agents can sign for anyone regardless. Restricted free agents, the buying club can still make an offer to match, and then it becomes like a normal trade. If not, the AFL just pluck a pick using this system. And then you've got non-free agents, Adam Sard, who don't have contracts in front of them, but don't fall into any category. So the only way they can get to the other club is by a trade, or they enter the draft, which is the pre-season draft for players, not the rookie draft. So,
yeah. And there's one more class of free agent, the delisted free agent, which you don't get compensation for if the player is moving in the year that they've become a delisted free agent. So if you get delisted, that year you're a delisted free agent. You can move. The club doesn't get anything. But once you've been delisted, you are a free agent for life. So every time you're out of contract, you are a free agent. So the next time you go to move as an unrestricted free agent, you will be able to get compensation, i.e. James Jordan. He was delisted at one point, was technically a delisted free agent. He re-signed with Melbourne. Now he's an unrestricted free agent again. He will move and they'll get compensation. So it's all just Mickey Mouse and just kind of made up.
We'll try and take you through it. But Chills, so this is a really good question, because this is where some people get confused, right? And it's a great question. So I'll answer your question, then I'll do a common misconception. So the rumours are at the moment, Zach Fisher will get 500 5 years, right? So that would be in this model if Carlton didn't have a contract and he didn't have terms still left with us, Carlton would get an end of second. However, trades between clubs when you're in contract, doesn't matter what this says. You could pay eight firsts and pay the guy 500k, or you could pay a guy like Carlton did. They took Martin through the draft. It would actually be a compensation pick early first for what Carlton did, but because of the contract rules, it didn't happen.
Isn't it crazy that you get more, right? The Zach Fisher example, you would get more if he was a free agent than if he's under contract. Isn't that crazy? Like the free agency is supposed to be free agency to move clubs, and it actually Zach Fisher's actually going to end up. Carlton's going to be worse off because he's in contract. That doesn't make sense, does it? Anyway,
it doesn't. And great point. Ben Mackay, great point. We're going to cover Essendon a bit later in the show, but yes, so this will be, North Melbourne will be hoping that it's over that 800k cut-off. I believe it's 820 for his age. No, it wasn't. Yeah, it was. 775, was it, Let Dog?
Yeah, it's a discount, about 770, because he's younger. So because he's 20, I don't know his age off the top of my head, because let's say he's 25 and not 28, he's actually worth, or 25, not 26. The trigger is lowered. So Essendon could pay him 775 instead of 800, and it'll still trigger that first round pick for North. Basically, what you can absolutely lock in and guarantee is that North Melbourne is going to get pick 3 for Ben Mackay.
Yeah, so basically, Cody, great question. North Melbourne will hope it's over that, and if it's not, they'll match it with their contracts and try and force a trade, which probably, at the value we're talking, pick 3, they ain't getting pick 3 from Dodoro. Do you know what I mean? You've got more chance of that. And Chills, just to answer your question, because I totally ignored it, I answered the second part. That'll just be a straight trade. Carlton won't get anything extra. It'll just be whatever the club buying pay for. So, okay. Matt, me and Let Dog, honestly, if you were near us, Matt, we would kiss you. We've been saying this for years. I wish it was as simple as 6 months to go. You haven't got a contract. Fuck your club. So let's do it. But here we are. So what you'll see here is, you can see there, Tom Doddy, I've changed these sheets to try and make them a little bit more user-friendly. I've used the kids and the wife and everyone as guinea pigs. 600k is the prospective salary cap. So we go onto our little system. That's top 30%. It's about a second round pick. And these are the picks that Adelaide have got. 9, 21, 24. Suddenly, the comp be around pick 28. Going what the AFL usually do, they let the shit clubs have their players. And if a club has been there or thereabouts in the finals, remember Adelaide should have played finals if the AFL wasn't corrupt. They'll be, again, punished, and it'll be after the shit clubs. So that's probably what they get. Pick 28, probably better than anything they'd get, if we are honest with ourselves, than from Brisbane and Collingwood. Bearing in mind, Collingwood's picks are 18 and 36, and they've got to make 3 list changes. And Brisbane, from memory, someone might be able to correct me, 27, 46, 56, and I think it's Gold Coast who have got the comedic 69. I think it might be 65, 62. So it's probably better than what they get. So this is one of them deals where, chat, let me know a percentage rating of this happening and where he goes, Brisbane or Collingwood. Like Dog, talk to me.
Yeah, so I guess if I was in Adelaide's boat, I'd probably be asking for a future first for him, knowing I'm not going to get that in a trade. I'd say maybe a future first and a swap. That's probably not going to happen. I imagine they're not going to fight too hard, so they'll just take the compensation, the mid-second round. I think if I was him, the club that he makes most sense to me at is Brisbane, just because they've got to lack a little bit of depth in defense. They got found out a little bit at times this year. They had to recall Gardner in the finals, and I just think he's an upgrade on all of them. The risk, and he would be the highest paid free agent this year if he hadn't had those ACL injuries in the past, but he has, so that's discounted his price. But yeah, for him, Brisbane makes way more sense to me than Collingwood. However, it's much of a muchness for him, isn't it? Like, I think Brisbane is a high chance of a flag.
Collingwood. I actually think Collingwood. I think I get a feeling they do a rough head with him, and he's fully fit, and then everyone goes, "How the fuck did they get him for nothing?"
Yep, classic.
This from Bevtone. Tell you what, this chat is the most intelligent chat already. It's proved to me. Spot on. And because of these numbers we're talking, there is value for Adelaide to do this for a future first because they've got Welsh next year, who is going to be pick 1. NGA, they've got him tied to him. They're going to have to formulate the picks. But it makes total sense that these two clubs we're talking about don't have the trade capital to buy Tom Doedee. So it makes sense for one side to offer way too much money, hide it in their cap for a year, and then the other club's happy not to sign him. And that is what's wrong with this league. There is no onus on signing players.
And we've seen it a few times where a club will get in a big free agent. They'll pay him a shitload, and then all of a sudden, a year later, he's signed an additional 2-year extension, which is basically they just flatten out the salary. So the downsides of the sacrifice you should have to make, and it's the same when you take on a Jack Bowes, for instance, in a salary dump. You should have been paying him $1 million a year. You're able to restructure his deal and flatten it out over a longer period. It means you're actually not suffering as an incumbent club bringing in players on big money because you can just make it up and you can just hide it in the wash, which is why contracts should be locked in and set with, well, not necessarily with the AFL, but the terms should have to be met by each club. Anyway, very smart. Well done. We love you, Bev Tone.
Says, this sounds like a silly question, but remember yesterday when I said there's no such thing as a silly question, a silly answer? Here is the silly answer. There is 1 to 18 picks each round. However, caveats. Right?
Yeah.
Caveats. If there is NGAs or free father-son bidding, right? If you're pick 19, that's now pick 1, right? Even though it's changed. Also, if the AFL give you picks out the goodness of their heart, like you'll see North Melbourne next year have 19 and 20 provisionally, that's still pick 1. So 18 is your answer, but effectively, there is a world that exists probably someday soon. Pick 40 is still pick 1 because of these AFL silly rules that we're covering. So 18 originally can change depending on weird anomalies. Michael, we're coming to that. You also saw my son laughed at 69. It shows how mature we are as a family. Cody, I agree. I think if he goes to Brisbane, Harris Andrews with this guy, Gardner floating through there, serious force. But I think we all agree that's it. But then me and Lek Dog, so you look at this. This is planning from Pom. I've explained the AFL compensation program, and you'll find a similar pattern here. Me and Lek Dog hate the AFL. And suddenly, if you've been thinking about it, there is ways to manipulate these rules. Vincent nails it. Rich clubs get richer. This AFL rules are a little bit like playing Monopoly with your kids, right? If you're the banker, you can cheat, and Saints and Essendon have found a way to cheat. So what's going to happen here is if you go back to that banding, they're going to offer them enough money, which is presumably 700k around there, which is what he's presumed to be on. And then Saints won't match the contract offer. So then what happens is a mythical pick, let's say it's pick 26 to keep the maths easy, goes to Saints, Jade Gresham walks to Essendon, everyone's happy. However, they've got a pre-agreement that because they've offered so much money to Jade Gresham to get the pick needed for Saints, Saints then give that pick back to Essendon for Dylan Shield. Now, why does that benefit both clubs? Essendon have got a larger salary cap, so they can probably absorb that. Dylan Shield is a quick replacement for the players that are missing at Saints. And effectively, they have swapped Gresham for Shield, but the AFL doesn't have that kind of method in it anymore. So they've created a loophole where they don't have, and effectively, I want you to get this through your head. This deal here, it's a bit like the taxpayer, us, are paying for this trade to happen because nothing really is happening in this trade. A mythical pick is being given to Essendon and to St Kilda to then buy Dylan Shield. So effectively here, this is the most dodgiest deal I have ever seen in my life. And I was nearly killing myself when Geelong managed to get pick 7 and Bowes. This somehow is worse.
So the other thing, Pom, we need to mention with free agency compensation. A free agent leaves your club, the AFL gives you a pick as compensation. But they take into consideration how many, for instance, did you get a free agent in the free agency period? If you lost a free agent and got a free agent, you don't get any compensation picks. So that's why we've seen in the past clubs will get a free agent in, and then they'll have a veteran free agent. Instead of letting him walk, they'll trade him, because then they haven't actually they'll trade him in rather than letting him come in for free. So that way they get the benefit of compensation and still getting a player in, but it was through a trade rather than a free agent. This is in that similar boat. And I want to answer Lachyjack's question. If Adelaide get pick 28, does the team who was going to get 28 have that pick pushed back? Yes. So the AFL, by you losing a player, it's crazy, right? You lose a free agent who's already played for you for 8 years. Your compensation in a real league would be, you don't have to pay that player $800,000. So you've got $800,000 in your salary cap, and he's played for you for 8 years. Your compensation was the 8 years of service. Now what happens? The AFL will give you a pick and they'll say, get fucked to the other 17 clubs, because you're not only ruining their draft and trade plans, you're benefiting the club who already has a benefit of having the salary to go out and replace the player that's left. Anyway, Lachyjack, yes, is the answer to your question.
Just like that.
Let's talk about Essendon and St Kilda.
To
summarise,
we're thinking it's pick 22 around there, but you can see there the picks for both sides: 12, 32, 51, 8, 28, 47, 68. Essendon seeming to be getting a bit of a draft arsenal going.
Yes, they've got a few picks coming in. I'm not really sure what they're planning. We know that they probably want to adjust a lot of what they're doing. It's interesting, isn't it, Pod? Maybe they're trying to just purely go, veterans in as free agents and go to the draft and try and bolster their young players. But when we talked about them the other day, we sort of mentioned they probably need to strengthen that mid-age part of the age of their profile, and maybe that's what they're trying to do. I can't really work it out. The other thing I can't work out with the Gresham and Shield deal. So Essendon paying Gresham, I kind of understand. I don't particularly rate Gresham, but I kind of understand how he fits in. And if you can get him for free, that's fair. I cannot work out the St Kilda Dylan Shield play. I know he was playing well before he got injured, but the issue is that he always gets injured. I think there's way better options as inside midfielders for them than Dylan Shield, but it almost seems like it's a done deal already.
Well, I mean, yeah, chat. Let us know your likelihood. We've got 9 out of 10, and double dummy. We haven't even covered the Ben Mackay pick 3. I'm angry at this. I'm with you, double dummy, and that's the world we live in. That's the world we live in, mate. Buddy Franklin is somehow a worse player than Ben Mackay. Just let that sink in. If you've ever wanted to feel bad about yourself, just think that. But yeah, like you say, I agree with you, like Dog. I don't understand the Dylan Shield. And if this was like any other sport, not AFL, I would not be surprised if St Kilda go along with this, then get that pick and go, nah, sorry, see ya, bye. And it's the ultimate double bluff. But
that ain't how this works.
I did want to put this up here. I actually feel that pick 51 for a player of Dylan Shield's age is fair. With the injuries and stuff, I would say...
And the salary.
Yeah, I would say it's evens then. Like 51, like 22. Fucking hell.
Mate, if I know he was playing well. I rated his year till he got injured, but you can't rely on him. He's going to be injured, and he's paid $800,000, $900,000 a year, according to all the reports. So to me, it's a Will Setterfield deal. It's like, yeah, we'll take him, but we're not giving you anything for him. We're taking him so you can afford to pay Ben Mackay, Jade Gresham, and Todd Goldstein. Like, I don't understand why St Kilda would give up a second rounder for him. If I was them, I'd be saying, you can have my third or my fourth, and that's it, because I'm keeping this second.
Mental. But, I mean,
and I reckon just wanted to quickly address that earlier question about, it wasn't a silly question, the how many picks can be in a round, and I've pulled up the trade period from 2021, I believe it was. There was 23 picks in the first round.
Yeah, it went on for days. It was like a Test cricket game. I was live for that.
It was that was the Oh no, 2020 was 23 picks because Carlton took we took someone. I think that was the Philp year, maybe.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And Michael, you nail it. Do you know what I mean? I think the mid-season trade period is going to be very interesting as well, Jay. But we come on to Elijah, 21 years old, 189 centimetres, 86 kegs, listed as a midfield forward. Probably his best position is half forward, swing hitting into the centre of the paddock. At the Gold Coast at the moment this year, the 9 games, 12.7 touches, 2.6 marks, 2.6 tackles, and 2.8 score involvements. A real down year for him. A guy that has had nothing but issues with his ACL and injuries, but was number 1, touted as number 1 in his draft year before getting injured. Incredible VFL year. Thank you very much, Mrs. Pom. You are a sweetheart. Absolute jet at VFL level, though, the last couple of years. A real nothing pick. Only Carlton interested him. A late second. Blue baggers in chat and teams around the country. What are we thinking about this deal? I really like this deal, actually. This is like one of the fair deals.
Yeah, look, I agree. I think it's probably annoying that he hasn't been able to break into that side completely for them and probably hasn't fulfilled that potential. But I'm not sure necessarily that he's in their plans with a new coach and a pretty deep midfield. And for us, as Carlton fans, it makes sense. I think you don't lowball it. You don't try and go too hard. You're not going to give a first for a guy that just hasn't performed at senior level, has had injury history. But you can make an argument that he's worth, a pick around the 20s. So you give him the closest pick we have, which is a second rounder. It'll have to be a future second rounder for him. And I think that suits them after we talked last night about the fact that Gold Coast don't need picks in this year's draft. They might need them in next year's draft. So he'll fit in well at the Blues. I don't necessarily think he's a lock to start the year next year in the 22, but I think he probably ends as that high half forward who can pinch hit in the mids. And I like it. I think it's a high upside play. And at worst, if it doesn't work, you keep his brother happy, and we're all about keeping the boys happy.
He says that with so much disdain. See you later, David. Love you, mate. There you are. You all get to see me be a dad. What position does he best? I think Connors is probably his direct rival. I think it's real good pressure for Connors. And to be fair to Elijah, although he's had injuries, he has been very good this year and he's changed a lot of things.
He can play in the mids if required as well.
Yeah, and I think that's why we've seen Connors pinch it there. I think Elijah's probably got a better engine than him. We have so many half. I think we do, but I don't think we have any natural ones. They're all, apart from Cunningham and Martin, the rest are kind of fabricated. Rowan's spot on, great fit. Trade points. So trade points don't carry over next year. So future first picks don't carry to any debt. They get affected by the debt. So we will recover that though, Lockie. Don't worry. That's going to be covered a load. Much love, Damien. But yeah, so you're ready. This is the time of year people make speculative trades. Now, tomorrow we're going to have a really special Show Me and Let Dog where we're going to take the piss. But I figured it's only fair to take the piss if you throw yourself into the piss. So here is Pom's Super Trade. Right. So what I've done here is I want you to think back to yesterday's episode. For those who weren't here, we talked about North have got 19 and 20 next year that aren't real picks. They can change subject to what they do, right? They can be taken off them. However, the AFL was specified, and it's very interesting in the wording of the statement, that if they are traded this year, they are kept, which says to me, if North have got any brains, they trade them picks. So for the hard of seeing on us, or those who are watching us on a phone, this will look like an ant has pissed on your screen. So I'll read it out. But we have got North Melbourne, future first, then future first, 19 and 20, being sent away. So they guarantee them, and they will receive Caleb Graham, a need, Zach Fisher, and a future second. Carlton send a future second. Remember the draft points we talked about last year, why it's good for Carlton to trade a future first now, knowing it's so easy to trade them back in next year in the draft when you get a good ascertain of where the players are. Hence Gold Coast, 3 top 10s this year. They're trading their picks away. 64 Fisher, and that goes. Elijah Hollands and pick 20 from North comes back. Elijah Hollands, Chol and Graham leave Gold Coast. 31 a future second, and North Melbourne's 19 come to Gold Coast. Remember, we talked about Gold Coast have some players in the NGA again next year. It covers their base there. Brodie Grundy leaves Melbourne as a salary dump. Chol comes in 64. Bit of back-end work for Melbourne. 31 leaves Sydney. Sydney get Brodie Grundy. I think that might be the best trade anyone's ever released. That is never going to happen because AFL clubs don't do 4-way trades. But I reckon that is brilliant.
So, Pom, when you first showed me this, I thought it was a bit too much. I thought Carlton and Gold Coast were probably getting too much. But what I will, and I've just checked this, so those future compensation picks, 19 and 20, that's what those picks currently are. They are end of first round picks. So they will probably actually end up being picks 25 and 26. Something thereabouts once you have father, sons, and academies, because we know the Camporelli brothers, we know Ashcroft, that's at least 3 picks they're going to bump out. There's probably 2 more. So those picks are going to end up being 25 and 26, I think, which makes it a lot more palatable. So I'll just break it down from my thoughts. North are sending out pretend picks 25 and 26. They get in Fisher, Graham, and a future second. That future second is going to be like slip 10 spots from one of those picks. So they're basically replacing one of those picks and get 2 established players, or 1 established player and 1 senior body. I like that. That bit alone, I'm ticking off. Carlton, we send out a future second. We get back pick 25, 26. We send out Fisher and we get Hollands, and there's we dump another pick in. I'm ticking that because I think slipping back, I think Fisher's worth more than Hollands is right now. So I think that's a tick. And then Gold Coast, out goes Hollands, Chol, Graham. All they need is points for next year. They get
none of them are first 22 as well, remember?
No, none of them are best 22 players. They end up coming up with pick 25, pick 40, and pick 31 this year. I think that's a tick. Grundy for Chol and 64. Chol ticks a box. Melbourne don't want Grundy. And then Sydney basically get Grundy for that second rounder, which we know is going to happen. So when you break it down and you look at the fact that those picks are not 19 and 20, they will probably be 25 and 26. I think it actually makes sense. I think these deals will all happen. They just not happen in one big deal.
Matt, I didn't steal it. This is my own working, this. I just wanted to get involved. What can I say? Sometimes I get lonely, mate. Sometimes I get lonely. How does a team know what future picks they don't? But in this scenario, North Melbourne do know they've got 19 and 20. The AFL has guaranteed that for them. So they're the only team that would know who they want. James doesn't like it. I think James is a Carlton fan. Jesus. If you...
We've done well
I do that. Mate, I'll tell you what. If I get Elijah Hollands for Fisher and I swap a second for 12 picks better for points... That'll turn me on. Right, so, no, well, effectively, Lachyjack, good question, right? Why I've done that is Gold Coast have got 3 fringe players. Sounds like they're going to go youth Gold Coast. They've already committed to it. Their list manager today has said that they're trying to get more young talent in to really play Damien's, Hardwick's, Dimmer's game style. So 3 players that aren't best 22 that are depth, I think, for a return, in my opinion, of a second and a first next year and 31 this year, which is extra points for all their talent that's coming in this year. Remember, we said their draft is fucked this year. They've got 3 kids locked in top 10. Replacing Hollands, Chol, Graham for Ethan Reid, Jed Walters and Rogers, I think is a fucking Jesus.
And
like,
the thing
huge
to
win.
Remember as well is Gold Coast do not want Marbia Chol on their books next year. Melbourne do not want Brodie Grundy on their books next year. So they want these players out. So that's why they're not going to ask for anything. They're going to show them the door and say, take your salary.
Apologies, James. Sorry, says. How long did... Probably too long. It was probably, I actually can tell you how long it took. 2 cigarettes and a cup of tea. So I'd say 12 minutes. I was outside on my little piece of paper working it out. And I looked at it and I was like, it's fucking all right, that.
It's not bad. I've certainly covered. I hated it when I first read it, Pod, but the way that future compo's worded, it's not like Gold Coast where it was you will get pick 12 or whatever that number was. It is you will get end of first round selections. So it shifts.
For those in chat asking about Harry Mackay and Clayton Oliver, stay tuned. We are only 2 slides away. But that's what you can do with them picks. Really get into your head this year that 19 and 20 next year, I would almost say 95% will be traded sometime.
They will be traded.
Historically in the AFL, when they've been given caveats of reviews, which has happened before in the AFL, they have been traded because then it negates that rule. So I think it'll be good. And the Chol Grundy thing makes sense because both teams lose their lost leaders in value, but they gain a player that probably they need that will play regardless of salary. Grundy for Sydney, Chol can play forward, and Melbourne have Van Ruwen and Oscar's brother. But next, this is an exciting one because Devon Robertson is a player that is probably my favourite player, right, of that year's draft. When Carlton picked Sam Philp, I was actually punching my face that we didn't get this kid. Devon Robertson, one of my favourite players, has been playing forward since he came in the AFL. I don't think that's a justice, but he is playing for one of the best midfielders in the league, right? He is actually naturally a midfielder. 22 years old, 185, 84 kegs. I think because of where he plays, and it's not his natural position, I think that negates his price. So I think he'll be a third. West Coast have been linked with him. They've come very bullish as well. If you see their list manager, he's a really nice guy, O'Reilly. He looks like an impersonator of Elton John. He looks like halfway through the trades, he starts singing, "Goodbye, Yellow Brick Road." But yeah, 16 touches, 9 disposals, 2.6 tackles, 0.2 goals, 2.4 score involvements. Third rounder. At face value, chat, you've got a guy that's played 16 games for the Premier League finalists, the grand finalists this year. He's played in a good system. He's been kept fresh, to be fair. I think this is a ripping deal. Western Australian boy. I'd love Carlton to get involved in this deal, but he has said he wants to go home. So it looks like it.
No, he's going to go. It won't cost him anything, and he's going to become a real key cog to that West Coast midfield. You kind of have to throw out his entire career in terms of stats because he's never had the opportunity to actually do what he's supposed to be doing, in my opinion. And I think that's being a pretty contested beast who can impact up the ground. I think he's going to be a fantastic pick. I don't know what his price is going to be in fantasy leagues, but you should be investing heavily into Devon Robertson's stocks. I don't think Brisbane have any reason to sort of complain. The only reason they might want to keep it, pretend to put up a fight about letting him go is because Ashcroft is out next year or most of next year with that. I think it was an ACL, but no, he'll go to West Coast. He'll be really, really good for them. He's the right age profile for them. Very similar boat to Paddy Dow, just hasn't had the opportunity. I think he's going to be a Jet where he goes. And I just wanted to answer Andrew Scott. He said, "It makes me sad that Collingwood will make the saving on Grundy." Apparently, the AFL has told Collingwood they will continue to pay his salary, even though he'll be at a third club. So don't worry about that.
Mate, I agree. I agree with you. I agree. I think you're excited. I think this is a no-brainer deal, This is one of them deals that, you look at sometimes, and these deals just turn me on. We'll go through some questions just quickly before we get to the next one. I think the most logical thing would be to trade it into 2 seconds next year, unless there's a deal this year. So if you go back and watch yesterday's episode, me and Let Dog took ages explaining the point system. I agree with Lachyjack, even though I understand it, fucking makes no sense. But we tried to make it make some sense. But I agree. But I think Carlton will probably, you may see them use that in a future deal. And that's why I think North Melbourne's picks will be looking there. With this trade, though, let's have a look at it. Why does it work out, right? I think that Brisbane will be looking at pick 39. I think they'll settle on 53. Brisbane are historically like Carlton. They are player first. They don't stand in the way of their player. Lachie Neale contract is a really good example of what Brisbane are about. They didn't heavily negotiate that deal with Fremantle. They asked for a price, and I think they changed the back end. But the big components Brisbane were happy for. They weren't dickheads. So I don't think that they'll stand in the way now that Robertson has asked to go back home. So I think this is a real good deal. I think it's a straightforward deal. You can see there why this is a real good pick for West Coast Eagles. Gives them core areas to really work on their depth. Also interesting as well, 34, 39. Do you know what I mean? Going to Brisbane gives them a bit more depth as well in there. They like project players. They've probably got a midfield deep enough as well to get a project midfielder because their midfield is already stacked. I reckon this is 100% happening. I reckon this will be the first deal done.
Oh, I think it's a done deal. I think we can already chalk this one up, put it in the book.
Knowing the AFL that these deals are done as well before we know about it. Just so you know.
And then they'll save it for the last day of trade radio. It's going to be fantastic.
Do you want to know what my prediction is? The Ben Mackay one is the one that they drag out. And I'm going to say this now. Pom's early call. Another team gets involved in the Ben Mackay deal.
Oh, God, please no.
It'll be Hawthorn. I'm going to tell you now. Be Hawthorn. They'll start the rumours. But we end with the big trade. This should take 10 minutes for us to get excited about Clayton Oliver. Now, the report, I want to just word the report correctly, it is believed teams are asking about Clayton Oliver. Now, you know me, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't buy into it. Unless I can eat it and smell it, I don't believe it's real. But there is a lot of noise about the 12-week hamstring injury. You don't have to be a genius. You've just got to find out how to Google it, right? That the hamstring injury was a disciplinary, right? Is a disciplinary. And he wouldn't be the first player to sign a long-term contract and have some disciplinary issues that was suddenly traded. It has happened before, and it would seem a change of tack. Now, I do think that I'm going to caveat this. I am not saying this is going to happen, but I do find it very weird Melbourne haven't closed the door very quickly. Genuinely, Clayton Oliver gets mentioned nearly every year that he's leaving, right? But they haven't closed the door. So it is our due diligence to look at this and see if it's possible. But what are they getting? Owen cries himself to sleep. He is absolutely a brilliant footballer. You're looking at one of the best in the league. 15 games this year. Look at the numbers just from playing 15 games. 30.3, 6.9 clearances, 6.7 tackles, 6.4 score involvements. Prime age, 26. He's a beast. He's got clearance speed as well, which is rare for a tough bastard like him. He can escape the contest. I'm looking at this, and I thought we can play this as a team game. There's over 90 of you in chat, so we can have a real bit of fun with this. But I would say the Doggies at this moment make sense with what they've got. And the Eagles, and historically, Let Dog and me did some research, usually works out about 2 firsts. There's usually a pissing a bit of at the end, swaps of thirds, but core value, it looks like 2 firsts with other stuff. But that's what the cost is. Let Dog and chat, what are we thinking about Clayton Oliver? Would they sell him for the missing piece?
I don't think that he gets traded, but I'm with you that usually someone comes out straight away and goes, "No, that's bullshit." So let's talk it out. Previously, 2 firsts and some stuff, or 2 firsts and a player is what you're looking at. Jason Horne-Francis, Dunkley, Luke Jackson, Lachie Neale. Jeremy Cameron was 3 firsts, but 2 seconds went back, so it was really 2 firsts. That's generally the asking price. So if you're Melbourne, you're asking for 2 firsts and a key forward, or you're asking for 2 firsts and a young player, or you're asking for 1 really good first and a superstar. So that's what you're asking for if you're Melbourne. I think he fits in. He can fit in pretty much any team, right? So Sydney, Freo, Magpies, I think they're all teams where if you could replace Jaeger O'Meara or Taylor Adams or the injured Callum Mills, he slots right in. Do they have the assets? Probably not. But there's not many clubs that he doesn't fit into, I think. And the two you've identified, Pom, there with the Bulldogs and the Eagles, I'm sure it's on the next slide, or we'll just talk through. They have some stuff they can throw at him. Obviously, the downside with a Clayton Oliver is he has to say yes to the trade because we live in Australia and that's the rules of the AFL. He has to say yes. So would he want to go to a struggling West Coast? I doubt it. But let's talk just in merits of what they have available. The Doggies and the Eagles have some stuff.
I've just nailed these questions before we got to that slide because some of you have already tipped what happens. Lachyjack, if he was a restricted free agent, you would be correct. If Carlton could trick someone to play 1.1, but he is that finicky third one we talked about, non-free agent. So effectively, he's out of contract, like Adam Sard. Carlton's options are delist, accept a trade, re-sign him, or send him to the draft, which you don't want to do. Owen, if it's Eagles and we get Reid, I'm not as sad. I agree. I agree with James. It's definitely a forward. So, right, what we're going to do is this is an interesting one. It's always linked. And I'm with you, Richard B. Flat. There is no smoke in this game without fire, right? There is no smoke without fire. So this here is based on it, right? So what I did to ascertain this is, and you'll see less than 5% chance because I didn't want anyone in chat going, oh, Pom's saying Clayton Oliver's going to leave. I've done this show way too many times over the years to know some of you are mean. But if you go through, let's just say if I was selling Clayton Oliver, it's to make my midfield weaker, but I'm getting that end product. I'm getting a key forward. So I went through the list of the Coleman top 20. Larky fits the bill, young, right? But North ain't getting rid of him.
No.
Sebastian, great one. Oscar Allen, absolutely. I think he'd be perfect. Issue, they're young. They're young. I think he is like everything to them. So the West Coast trade, right? I looked at this and it's going to cost them a lot. Now, Jack Darling doesn't fit their skills, but they want to go young. Ryan Marriage takes his job. Do they sell it to Melbourne? I actually think, I know you say it's a horrible deal for Eagles. I actually think that's a worse deal for Melbourne in the terms of they're having to find a key forward through this. But they do get Harley Reid, but they're still in square one. They've sold Oliver for a could-be Harley Reid, and then they have to do something next year. Then the Dogs, I thought Aaron Norton. Now, Aaron Norton is in and out of their side. They've played him down back. It's not really worked. Aaron Norton, pick 10 and pick 17 with a late second coming back would mirror up with some of the big deals we've seen here. And Aaron Norton, again, is probably that profile. When we pick 10 and 17, it would allow Melbourne, with the earlier pick they've got, remember, to maybe launch at pick 1. So they could get Harley Reid and Norton. Other clubs I thought of, Carlton, let's come to the elephant in the room. Right? Let's think about this. Chat. If you're a Carlton fan or you're not a Carlton fan, I want you to think, if Carlton trade, let's just say Harry Mackay fits the bill, right, for Melbourne. Without a shadow of a doubt, he fits the bill. It leaves Carlton 2 holes. Key forward, we've only got 2 key forwards on our list. Harry Lemmy's a decade away, but 2 years away at earliest, I would say. Let's just say Clayton Oliver came in, right? I think it instantly makes our midfield better. He's a huge upgrade on Hewitt. We've seen 2 big guys, Cripps and Oliver, would basically be an upgrade on Viney and Oliver. And we've seen how that works with Walsh and Chera, definitely better than the pieces around at Melbourne. So it instantly makes it probably one of the best midfields ever assembled, right? My next question is, and Richard nails it, do you trust Charlie to kick him? And who's replacing Harry? Who are you going after? So I would say that if Carlton traded Harry and Oliver, you'd almost be looking at almost a fair swap, wouldn't you, on a trade table? Because both of them are hard to ascertain.
Yeah, I think you'd probably have to throw something else in as Carlton, even though key forwards are really hard to get. It's just Clayton Oliver's 26, and aside from this year, he basically hasn't missed a game in his career. You know, no one needs to talk about how good Clayton Oliver is. The hard part for the Blues would be, yes, filling the key position role would be next to impossible for them once they made a trade. And they would have to reshuffle a lot of that midfield. So the guys that we're finding spots for in the team, George Hewitt's, Matt Kennedy's, all these half forward guys that go into the mid, Sam Doherty, suddenly you've got to find ways to either move them out of the club to somewhere new or to reposition them or to just pay them to play reserves, which I don't think you want to do. So for mine, in a hypothetical, yes, I could see a world where both teams could talk themselves into it, but I think it requires way too much shuffling on Carlton's side, and I also don't think Melbourne would do it. My question for you, Pom, let's talk West Coast. Why would they do it, right? They're shit. Is it just because he's still in his prime and he's got, 5 years, 6 years of really good footy left and he'll instantly make them better? Why would they want him? I know why Western Bulldogs want him. It's because they love every inside midfielder possible and they want them in every single position on the ground.
I mean, I look at their list and their list is like Geelong. It's another Epstein Island. People too young, too old, and no one in middle to make it okay. So I think Clayton Oliver is that leader of their club. They've lost a lot of leaders. For me, he comes in. My question, big one here, is I think, and I agree with Owen, if I was Melbourne, I'd want this deal. Pick one and the future first and Jack Darling.
I get it from Melbourne. Yeah, absolutely get it from Melbourne.
And if I was Eagles, I agree because people are talking about Tim Kelly. Tim Kelly, that was a different time zone. They were still in the market for AFL. I don't think it's any surprise Tim Kelly has come out, been brilliant since they've got shitter. I think straight away, Oliver and Kelly means you can play two young guys in there. Straight away, that's a good thing for them. They've got them big bodies. That's when most teams fall off. And I don't think Jack Darling will play a lot of games. So for Melbourne, I think that deal's better for Melbourne.
100%.
Right? But then I also think the deal for the Doggies makes sense because I think the Doggies lack a true Clayton Oliver. I think if you pair Clayton Oliver and Bont together with that outside run they've got, that's brilliant. If I was probably Melbourne, I'd want the Dogs deal because 10-17 and my first, I could get Harley Reid as well. And Harley Reid, Aaron Norton, I'm winning. I've got the best of all worlds.
Hypothetical as well. Then if you're the Doggies, you're looking to move Jack Macrae on for some assets as well because you're probably not playing. I mean, you could play all of them in the same midfield, but Bevo won't. So you're probably looking to move on a Jack Macrae, which is fine, and you can probably regain some of those assets. It's interesting. Maybe we'll work on a 3-teamer tomorrow or a 4-teamer that has Macrae, Oliver. We'll find some parts. We'll make it work.
Yeah, and to answer your question, personally, I think pound for pound, you would want Clayton Oliver at any club. I think Carlton would. My issue is with Harry Mackay. I don't think I'd do it for Harry Mackay purely because anyone you bring in for Harry Mackay is maybe. If Carlton had someone who was there kicking 20, 30 goals when they were injured, I'd be like, okay, maybe we can manufacture something. But I think it could. The midfield turns me on. The midfield, I think Clayton Oliver and Cripps with Chera and Walsh is ridiculous. But I also think people are forgetting 2 years ago, Harry Mackay was the best forward in the league. And I think he can get back there. I really do. And that would kill me. I think Harry is too hard to replace this year. I think if it was next year where there's 5 key forwards in the top 20, might turn Carlton's head. And they might go, right, Charlie takes the lead. We play 2 taller forwards, a bit younger, try and help him out. But I just can't see it.
Yeah, look, I think ultimately, I think every club, if they could, would take Clayton over, but I don't think we probably need to spend too much time on it as much as it is. I'll work on a mega trade for tomorrow. How about that?
Remember, James, though, mids are hard to come by. Mids of your Cripps, your Oliver caliber, rares, rocking or shit, and getting rarer in the AFL draft as players become more classy on the outside. But yeah, for me, I'm with Let Dog. We keep Harry, and we just enjoy this as a pipe dream with less than 5% chance of happening.
We're not saying this happens.
Now we've said that, I can't wait for Nick Austin to announce he's found a way of fabricating this deal and Clayton Oliver is a Carlton Blue. But that doggies deal, I'm telling you, if that doggies deal comes through, that is the best bit of business ever. Just so you know, if I was the Melbourne list manager, they rang me up and said, we'll give you Norton 10 and 17, I'd fucking be like, I'll drive Oliver around now.
Yeah.
But chat, as always, a pleasure. We're back tomorrow, so find me, Pominors, Twitter, Facebook, Insta. If you've got any trade rumours that are amusing you, or you've seen some funny ones, send them in. And me and Let Dog tomorrow are going to spend the show just breaking them up and having a bit of a laugh with them of why they maybe are true. But thank you very much for your love and support. Peace, love. Pom and Lek out.
Go Blues.